He controlled the vigorous steam. He harnessed the lightning for hire. He drove the celestial team. And man is the Lord of the fire. A portion of poetry from Crawley that I've really been so moved by. And especially the fact that when he talks about man, and this is just a portion of the actual all of it, but he capitalizes man and he, and we talked about it a little bit. We think that it's very moving, as in the things that man has overcame and accomplished, and still getting back to, there's another part that, by the way, the name of this is called the pentagram, but
and he goes through like each of the elements of the pentagram.
It's so beautiful. I'm actually trying to learn all of it, but I'm just doing a little bit at a time. But
go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, there's another part when he talks about man is the Lord of his spirit, and just the way he words all these things in here. It always makes me think, and that's why I use it as kind of I'll say to myself, multiple times throughout the day, because it's a reminder of how much power we can actually tap into. He was just reading to me an hour ago in a book of Buddhism that, some of their teachings was we're the universe, and if we apply ourselves in a certain way, we can have the universe backing us up.
Exactly, like we are the universe. I think it's so insane, I think this is part of the development of man, is realizing that, no matter what view of the universe you take, okay, whether it's the Big Bang or God himself created us, either way, we all come from one thing, you see, and we're all interconnected, and we are all the universe itself. Like me and you sitting here right now, we are the latest articulation of the universe, you know what I'm saying, right now in this present moment. And we do have a sympathetic link to these forces by simply being the universe, and it's insane, what we've went through as a species. From it's perplexing. I think the presence of man on this planet, a thinking, reflecting, creative being like ourselves, there's nothing else like that we know of, and we're very unique. And I think the presence of us is, some of the biggest evidence that something strange is going on in this planet, and that something strange went on in our past.
You get to those certain, say we're these high realms that various things can help us tap into. And these things start to be they start to reveal in a very obvious way. And this is stuff we've both experienced in many different ways. And a lot of them has come more recently for me. And I wrote this down so I can bring it up. And I think the biggest part of this, whether you're even using plants, reading, mystical teachings, a meditation, or as he talks about it a lot, psychedelics is kind of the shortcut there. But with all of these things, concentration and the willingness to let go of what you think that you are, combined with these things, because I feel that it's so easy to get into these things but still have this. He was just talking about it, and it really hit home for me, because I'm, struggling with certain parts of this, maybe a lot different than others, but having a preference to what everything is. That hit me. I didn't even get a chance to tell you how much that moved me, by the way.
Yeah, man. It's like the saying, I'm not even sure where the saying comes from. I know Ram Dass says it a lot. The great way is easy for those who have no preferences. And,
it could be so many different things as well.
Yeah, that's so mind-boggling to our Western materialistic society. you know, and it all ties in, you know, to this, you know, conquest of dimensionality. I like that term. Conquest of dimensionality. We're conquering dimension after dimension.
Yeah.
You know, and we're perhaps about to break through collectively into you know, a new stage of human evolution, you know.
You know, man, it can feel very senseless to ever think in this circumstance we're in, and you know, us making this video at this moment, there's a lot of things that has recently happened to where the thoughts of being free is
At
it's
least on a physical level.
on a physical level is it's very scary.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't know exactly how to handle this type of situations because it's so out of our, at least this part of it.
Yeah.
But there's so much that we can do, and
you know, it's like Ram Dass said. He said, whether we're in the Aquarian age or whether we're devolving into nuclear holocaust, I'm going to continue to expand my consciousness, to work on myself, to relieve the suffering around me as best as I can, to not create suffering more than there already is. And you know, either way, we got work to do on ourselves until we exit this game. You know.
I'm glad you actually ended up sending me that we still have work to do, because at this moment when I was researching these things, I felt very hopeless.
A lot of people do, man. A lot of people feel hopeless.
You know, I was reading a lot of people has just, you know, put things on Reddit that a lot of people just like us are so concerned about really what's the truth behind all these things that's happening, and really the world. This is a world conflict.
Why? How can these things continue to go on? These wars, these religious wars. You know, how in the information age can these things continue to happen? How does history continue to repeat itself?
Yeah.
You know, we don't have time for this. Our planet is in a crisis, in a ecological crisis, and you know, we can't afford nuclear waste. You know, and we can't afford to be destroying each other.
This actually brings me to another one of Crawley's, a bit of his poetry that I discovered just the other day. I haven't even told you about this yet. It's a kind of a dark piece, you know, negative. He talks, and I can't remember the name of it. We should look into this later though for sure. But it's talking about everything is so far gone. He wrote this like the early 1900s.
It's crazy.
And oh, dude, I got to show you this. I just thought of it. I found out the other day about him. He was so right. It was a very negative point, but truthful as well. But one of the lines in it is, let's take out man, humans, and let's start over.
Yeah.
Because we have destroyed the planet. And I'm thinking, whoa, what kind of stuff is he talking about here? Is this what is really going on in this time, or is this things that's happening? Because there's been many things that's been revealed into the future from what the Book of the Law talks about. You know, living in the Aeon, not the Aeon, but the what is it called?
The Age of Horus.
Horus, yeah. And that really got me thinking. I'm like, oh gosh, you know, that line in particular. There's a lot of interesting things, but the one that stood out to me was, let's take out man and start over. That's
you know, it might take that, man. You know, what if that is the situation we're facing? What if, you know, I like to think not, but you know, we may be too far gone, and nature might just say, you know what, I want to start from scratch.
Yeah.
In another couple hundred eons, maybe there'll be a species that can do things better than we have.
Yeah. You know, this is something that needs to be talked about and looked at, and as much as, I mean, look at people like me and you. I mean, we have these conversations, we record them, we put them on YouTube, and you know, most people wouldn't continuously put out videos and talk about these things if they weren't going to get some type of attention. The truth is that's not at all what it's about. As long as we're living, we're for sure going to talk about these things,
right.
and
because it's our duty.
This is it's kind of branch off into this a little bit. Despite the things that's going on around us, we are still here, and all of us. It's everybody's duty to do the great work.
Right.
There's many things to be talked about and studied during this, and we need, like we mentioned before, this concentration. We need to let go of who we think we are as much as possible, but this is one of the situations that is it's a work in progress of who, letting go and slowly breaking free from these material things in which we may think is the most important aspect of this. And the sad part about this is, if we was to bring this up to a person with a 3-story house and the nicest cars and motorcycles or whatever else God knows, they would look at us and say, well, they're just jealous, they don't have what I have. Right. So they went to spiritualism, and that's something that makes me very frustrated.
Yeah.
That they say that. Now granted, I guess there could be some truth to that. Maybe certain people wouldn't go into spiritualism if they had so much things to occupy their time.
Yeah.
But we talk about this a lot. We don't want or need to be wealthy. We obviously, being out on the street is not even an option. If that was the case, we would for sure just go out into the woods.
Yeah.
We've considered that anyway. But no, what I'm trying to say is that's kind of a huge misconception. This is for everybody, those kind of people.
Yeah.
Crowley mentioned that in the book that we're reading right now. This is for these people who are working at a bank, as a
magic is for all.
Doctor, anybody working in restaurants.
Right.
But things that we need to be figuring out, and as soon as we're born, that timer is hit, and we don't know when it's going to go off. We don't know when we're going to be pulled back out of here, and that's freeing ourselves from the things that we are born into, to figure out why the hell we are even here in the first place, and what is this, where we came from, what death is, where are we going back to, and connecting to this one consciousness that is all that there is to begin with.
Yeah.
And I love what you read earlier, man. It just was perfect the way it was written about what happens after you are dead. Maybe he will explain this a little better, because I get ahead of myself and get excited and don't cover like 3/4 of what things actually are. But he was reading me in a book of what is it actually called?
It's a Tibetan Book of the Dead. This
Yeah.
is
a portion of that.
A portion of it. This is the Teachings of the Buddha, edited by Jack Kornfield. I love Jack Kornfield. He's amazing. He's still around. He's still living.
Cool. It's good to have
Duncan
people like that
Trussell
around.
loves him.
But is a lot of people, probably most everybody, on their deathbed, they freak the fuck out.
Right.
And they talk about everything. What you are seeing is just as a reality as what we think that this is.
Yeah.
And this light that you see, and we discussed, maybe this is what mediums are talking about, whenever there's a ghost, whatever you want to call it, of a loved one that's still kind of around. Maybe they're trying to get them to transition to where they need to go after that. But it's following this light that is actually just what is behind everything.
Right. Yeah, in Hinduism they talk about, in the Bhagavad Gita it says that Brahman is the self. That's how it says it. Brahman is the self. So the deepest part of you is the same thing as the deepest part of me. And it's differentiated itself and it differentiated itself into these individual souls that have karma that will need worked on through lifetime after lifetime. Um, but yeah, in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it talks about this period of about 30 days that we will spend in this place called the Bardo. And the Bardo is this, I think Bardo literally means in between.
Yeah.
And you'll have visions, and that always makes me think of DMT, because we do have DMT in our bodies, and most likely in our brains. DMT is in the pineal glands of rats. We have not tested this in humans because it would kind of be hard to do that ethically. But we do know that DMT is in our bodies. It's most likely produced out of our pineal gland as well. And it seems to be like this death compound, and perhaps that Bardo state is kind of running on that. Who knows? But you will be presented with visions in this in-between state, and your reaction to these things will determine whether or not you'll reach that light of freedom, or maybe you'll be lost in that realm for a while before being reincarnated into and so your reaction to your visions kind of dictate your incarnation. So if you've lived your life pushing away these ideas, maybe because they're a little unsettling to you, the only way these ideas will be unsettling to you, the only reason that the idea of death and karma is kind of pushed away by a lot of people, is because, for one, people want to live their physical lives without repercussion. So they just say, oh, that's not real, this is ancient shit,
Exactly.
But I think if you've ever had a psychedelic experience, it will definitely make you consider these things. But this unitary state of consciousness, the idea that behind it all is just the one, and is unmanifested awareness, and we don't want to come back here again and again. This is a place of suffering. This is not our home.
And when you get to a certain age, when you're like a kid and a teenager, you don't really think about it, but it don't take long after that to realize this is a place of suffering.
Yeah.
And I want to put a point across, man. You worded that so great.
Even your joys are suffering.
Because we're worried about them being taken away.
They don't last, and you worry that they will be taken away.
So let's just take, for example, and then I'll go back to what I was going to say, that, you've lived the first 18 years of your life lonely. You're one of those people, the way I was, that's only been with like one woman, and when I was really young, I wanted to find somebody to actually stay with until I passed away. We've both talked about the similarities before in us, and what can happen, you get with this person, and then that could be, it's so amazing, but perhaps something is still making you very sad and depressed all the time, and that could be, well, I hope they stay with me forever.
Exactly.
That's just an example. You can have whatever you will have that's amazing. You get a new car, and then you're going to worry if somebody hits it with a buggy at Walmart. Like, we can name so many things
Buddha,
forever.
This is one of the Buddha talks about the Four Noble Truths, and one of the Four Noble Truths is suffering is always caused by attachment. If you're dying,
you can't put that, to put it much simpler.
Possibly couldn't. Yeah. If you're dying, that dying process is going to be very miserable if you're attached to this incarnation. Oh, I don't want to leave this. I don't want to die. And it's miserable. But if you're not attached and you say, this is, this is the majestic process of the universe, And this is, maybe my little human mind can't fully grasp it, but I trust it. I surrender to it. I think that's the thing. We're not saying, I don't think humans are quite capable of wrapping their heads around some of these ineffable truths. But we do get insights and glimpses into these things, and this idea of, and when we say non-attachment, we don't mean like, asceticism.
Yeah.
The Buddha spent time with ascetics before he got enlightened, and he realized that the this ascetic lifestyle, this attachment, that they were still attached. They were attached to being holy, and being,
Yes.
so that was an attachment of itself. So we're human, and we have biological processes.
It's something we have to deal with on the go and just slowly try.
But you don't have to be attached to it.
Yeah.
You know.
It goes back to also having passing thoughts, attaching.
Yep.
Ours.
You are not your thoughts. So it's like this. Ram Dass talks about this. He says, he says when he feels depressed, he doesn't say, "I'm depressed," because that means he's identifying with this feeling that's arising. Instead, he says, "There's depression." You see the difference there? It's a subtle difference, but it's a not identifying with it.
It's like Crowley's teachings talk about as well, which there's a gentleman, he's still alive with us today, was a huge fan of his work, and I remember him talking about if somebody comes up to you and you have like a stuffy nose,
like I do right now.
Yeah, like you have the cold. No, I'm getting better.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not. That's just a different little situation.
Yeah,
but
because
there's all sorts of ways.
Our minds have such an impact on our lives. I mean, if you want to look at this in a scientific view, the placebo effect. You give a child a sugar pill and the symptoms go away because he believed in it. That's magic.
Well, scientists say the same thing about. There's been cases that we don't know if they're actually real, obviously. We do know there's definitely dark deities that would be best to stay away from.
Yeah. Just perhaps by wrong action, we invite these things in. And I don't really think that, and I could be wrong, but I do feel that there are dark forces and hell realms and things of that nature, but I don't think, if you do find yourself when you're dead in one of these hell realms, I think that it has to do with a resolution of your karma. Yeah. I don't think that it's irredeemable.
Right, it's not this permanent for eternity place.
Exactly.
I mean, look,
because that would be unfair.
Let's just take a minute to look at this. This is so unreasonable to look at it this way. It's impossible throughout your life not to get hung up on at least a little bit of something and do things wrong. I mean, that's just pointless, if you look at it this way. And that brings me to the point that I wanted to put across, but I kind of got off track. Classic. But the reason I'm bringing this up because I was talking to somebody the other day, and somebody who was just strictly a Christian and would not look at or hear. I mentioned.
Talk about turning a deaf ear. These people are.
That's what they said.
Yeah, these people turn a deaf ear to anything that counteracts their beliefs, and that's a bad idea, I think.
So this point that we're wanting to point across is no matter what or how deep you are in some type of practice. We all must keep an open mind. Yeah. Because if we don't, then we can't continue to grow and learn.
Right.
And I wanted to stress that because, I brought this up the other day and they got so offended. They started, and I was just wanting to have an open conversation with somebody. Exactly. And I wasn't claiming to know any answers, obviously. I was just saying...
offering an alternative point of view.
I was like, maybe we can put our heads together and come up with something. Let's...
And if you
some of your experiences.
Yeah, exactly. And have an open conversation and discuss these things.
That's what it's all about.
It is what it's all about. And me and you, we can't be so caught up in what we think. I talked about this before, having highest principles, having having ideas that you have, that are not quite beliefs, but are what I call highest principles. They're things that could be altered the moment you have better evidence of something, or you have an experience that counteracts it.
Sure.
It will be replaced immediately. So we're always growing and evolving and our understanding of the universe.
Modern society mostly will question you and say, but I thought you were, the Christians, for example, will say that you're not building your faith on foundation. You're like a what are them things called that's always floating around when the wind blows them. They use these things to get under your skin.
Right. What they call it? The things in the desert, right?
You see them things in the desert.
Bushes.
I don't know. They use that. Now, don't let this get into your head, because if you think with any sort of reason at all,
exactly,
it's this is such a big problem, and it's hard to word exactly how it's got its hooks into everybody.
Yeah.
We have to look at things with reason.
Exactly.
And
reason and experience.
And no, if your religion isn't based truly
on reason,
experience, and love, then it's false.
Exactly.
It's false.
And people don't like to think about this who are Christian. That God is a maniacal God. It's a male God, and it says, if you don't worship me, I will send you to hell for eternity. I will fuck you up. Not only in this life, but in the spiritual life.
You need to ask, why wasn't we just created to think a certain way? Why fuck us like this?
Exactly. Why throw us into this with no rule book?
You didn't make us like you are.
Why do you expect me to believe this heavily translated ancient book? You know what I'm saying? Why do my experiences not line up with this book?
I love this song by We Both Do, Audio Slave, Show Me How to Live.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he's talking. At least that's the way I always took it.
And I think
we end up in this strange place now, Creator, as he show me how to live. This has been something that's been thankfully talked about more and a little bit in recent years. I do feel that we have the disadvantage in our certain community here, but
we gotta kind of stay in the shadows for the most part.
I want to say something real quick, man. I want to say that anybody who doesn't have one person they can openly talk to their ideas, and if you veer away from what you're told, we assure you that we relate to you.
Yes.
And if it wasn't for me and him being able to talk openly about this stuff,
things would get
else. So bottled up, man.
Yeah.
I would have some big problems.
Yeah.
And look, as much as I love my wife, for example, it's not that she has this set religion or anything that she practices. It's just that she really doesn't care. And if I'm bringing up an idea, she just really, she's kind of strictly concerned with things here at the moment, and obviously that's okay. It's just that this is not where I'm at right now. Right. This is not
I think
where you're at.
I think it's wise to consider, what is the best way to spend our times. Our culture would say the best way to spend our time is to, you got to get a good job so you can make money. You're not going to have fun if you don't have any money. You're not going to be able to buy things. So we live in this capitalistic culture that most people believe that, man. I mean, I see people so much. They're so concerned with, I gotta get a good job.
Yeah.
I gotta start making some money. Women are not going to want to blow me if I don't have this type of car.
God.
It's horseshit.
I want to talk about this a little bit, and we've talked about this before. Yes, we do have jobs. We want to point out some of the things that kind of make it more bearable, and to we hope to one day be in a situation to where we're making about $1 trillion a year alone on this YouTube channel. Just kidding, but seriously, first of all, we both do not believe at all that having a job and being enslaved to this capitalistic outlook on things is at all the only thing to live for. In fact, it's at the bottom of the list. Um, the way things are run, it's certain that this is the reason why a lot of people, struggle with various different types of problem. Um, whether it's obviously anxiety or even health problems, heart problems. You know, sometimes I wonder, if I was, if I wouldn't, if I was just me myself, I would be tempted to just go completely off the grid and probably live in a cave somewhere, supposedly the way Giuseppe Andrews did.
Terrence McKenna.
Terrence McKenna, Crawley, he's spent a lot of time, living in the woods in a cave. We talk about these things. Now, it's actually yesterday, I actually started a new job, and just a little bit more pay than what I did before. My wife's really excited about this. And it does seem to be a better place. But ultimately, even if you have a job that you actually enjoy, it's still, you can't just think that this is all that there is.
Right.
Because I think one of the best quotes we've looked at, he showed me this a long time ago actually, but capitalism and culture can show you many things. It can show you how to be a welder, a construction worker, a doctor. It can teach you these things that we all learn in school, and then somebody goes to college, but they cannot teach you the great work.
Cannot teach you how to be a real human being.
And that's what we need to be getting back to. So going back to what I said about, people who, have jobs, and if anybody gets out of it, then that's great.
Yeah.
If they, have some other
way to have income, that's great.
If you're retired or whatever else, then amazing.
But if you do have to spend time at a 9 to 5 of some sort, then it's even more crucial for you to make time for practices that allow you to purify yourself, because if you're not doing that, and you're just coming home and cracking open a beer and scrolling through TikTok,
your setting yourself up for doom.
Your internal compass is going to be just all out of whack.
Now, we also want to say a lot of these things, a lot of these mysteries, as he mentioned before, can be very unsettling. But what's truly unsettling is this position that we're already in. So we're here in this physical form, and all this weird stuff is happening around us. That itself is probably the most unsettling part of it all. We just want to figure out
what's the best way to live.
Exactly. What's the best way to live? What can we do to better ourselves? People that we come in contact with, everything living, everything with a consciousness.
And evolutionists, like Darwin evolutionists, they like to say, they pervert the notion of evolution, and they say, look at the tiger and the way he jacks, this animal. It's just the way it is. The strong survive, and so they use that as an excuse to build social structures to where the government, the strong, will manipulate the weak. But I think this is a real fallacy, because although we are an animal with a much more evolved consciousness. And as we raise consciousness, the more we raise our consciousness, the more we reach ever towards, God consciousness. And I think that, we don't have to, we don't have to treat people bad. You know, we can allow everyone to exercise their unique abilities and their unique interests. And I think as far as morality is concerned, we should practice tolerance. And if I and my brother believe in the true will, then it would be hypocritical of us to perturb someone from doing what they feel is best in their situation. So we should practice tolerance. And you want to wear those clothes, that's fine. You want to love this person, that's fine. We can't perturb other people off of their path. We are an animal that has arisen out of the rest of the animal matrix. We are a creature that is headed for the stars, potentially. And
Yeah, actually, I want to add something to what he just said. Excuse me. I would like to come forth with this truth. What he just talked about, I actually have a hard time with. But I'm actually getting better with it.
it's getting better all the time.
Is it can't get no worse?
Yeah.
Something like that. I agree with that part.
A little sidetrack here. Lennon was on acid. He accidentally took acid during that recording.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he thought he was taking an Opa, but he took it down now. He took some LSD.
I want to change the subject real quick just to point out, brother, man, I couldn't be having more for it in
Me
this
either.
call.
It's an amazing plant, man. I love these plants. It's amazing to be rocked in the arms of the goddess.
I want to actually point out this fact really quick.
And to feel this way and not be doing damage to our brains.
That's what I want to say.
Not to be toxifying our temple.
We want to put the point across, so listen up very closely. Please, if you listen to anything, listen to this. Kava has no sort of damage that it can bring forth to you.
Not only that,
but
no addiction, for Christ's sake. It's not even physically dependent.
Please, let's look at how magical this is.
Yeah.
This is the most magical thing in
Similar
the world.
to marijuana.
Yep. But going back to what I said, in recent years, I've had this problem to where, I might pass somebody somewhere and just think, man, like, this guy's wearing like spandex shorts and a tank top. He's just so attached to his big muscles.
Yeah.
And no, it's not that I'm jealous because he has big muscles and I don't. Well, maybe a little bit, but no, seriously. No, I want to say this real quick as well. I feel that we all could learn to laugh at ourselves a little bit more.
Totally, because we're when you trip, or when you get really high on these plants, sometimes like normal things become really strange. Like try to have sex on mushrooms. It's amazing, but it's like
weird.
Whoa, this is so weird. But other aspects of our personalities like that too. Like it's weird. We're in a weird situation. We're all funny in our own ways.
The truth is we have no, at least with certain people, you really can't, none of us can fool each other of trying to be something we know that we're not, because
this is who I think I am. This is who I think I am.
Yeah. And, going back to this problem that I've had, I've looked at things like this, where, I look at a woman who's showing 3/4 of her boobies and butt to just random people in the supermarket.
Obviously trying to attract people.
And they say that, I'm wearing this because it's comfortable and it's hot outside, but look, I don't have my dick flopping around because it's comfortable. It's much more comfortable to have it flopping around. But I don't do that because I feel that it's not necessary and it's not a good thing to do. But I will admit these kind of things do bother me, and I need to have tolerance for it. I need to not worry about it. Why does it bother me? Because I just would like for everybody to, start, all of us together, start experiencing these truths together. And we should take care of our bodies. We've talked about this, but to maybe let go of it a little bit as far as not being attached to it could help us so much.
And regardless, like, we also have to let people make their mistakes.
Yeah.
People are not going to learn by you preaching at them. We're tired of that.
Yeah.
When you preach at people, that makes them want to do the opposite.
I want to put this point across as well. Me and him, for example, never, ever, ever, ever promise you preach some of the things that we've discovered from these plants and other things. We simply would just like for other people to, maybe relate to some of the things that we've experienced. And
because it's an alternative.
Crawley just moved his book.
Whoa!
The ghost of Crawley. He done this to say, "Good job, fellas. Guys are doing good." There's the man
himself.
The myth, the legend. No, he's not the myth. It's all very true. It's right there in black and white. But yeah, that tolerance is something I've been trying to work on a lot recently. And no matter what circumstance we're in, to just look over some things.
And the satanic philosophy, as brought forth by LaVey, he brought up a very good point, which was this: don't get the idea that the church has dispersed, which is Satanists. They're people that sacrifice children and they kill animals and they're evil rituals. LaVey said this is totally unnecessary. Not only is it unnecessary, but it's actually very hypocritical. And hypocrisy is one of the things that we despise the most. And the reason it's hypocritical is if I am teaching people that, Satan represents, the fulfillment of your will, then it would be hypocritical of me to deter someone else from their will. So if I kill an animal in a ritual, that's deterring that the animal didn't want to be slaughtered,
Exactly.
So that's a hypocrisy, and it's unnecessary, and that's not the way it works.
Yeah. If you really look around, as LaVey always used to say, and I said this in a very calm fashion to somebody I recently had a conversation with. I brought up that, your religion, Christianity, if you look throughout history, whether it's the Christians, the Catholics, how much people they have had put to death over the years is completely, oh God, it's crazy. Yeah. I mentioned this in another video, but I really would recommend you looking up the Knight Templars. Mm-hmm. They was let's just pretty much call them a pagan practice, nature-based, a lot of
alternative to the, Judeo-Christian society which they lived in, which we also live in.
I actually researched one time and I brought up something else. Why was they put to death? I just wanted to see what some of the answers was, and I will see how untrue that it was worded. Sometimes I'll do that with things, and the answer was because they was practicing sorcery.
Yeah.
So that justified what they did. And I've said this before, I'll just throw it out real quick since we're kind of on the subject. It really makes you wonder who was the devil in these incidents.
Yes, sir.
And I think that's something we should all examine.
If the devil is the embodiment of evil, if that's your definition of devil, then it's no doubt the Christian God and the people and his ministers. That's the true devil. Satan is a deity that wants us to be liberated. Satan is the perversion of the pagan gods that came before the Christian God.
Now, so right, by the way, man, kind of branching off just a little bit, but speaking of magic, paganism, but actually, alchemy. I kind of want to talk about some recent experiences. I talked about them a little bit. Past couple days, you go to that really cool thing. This is magic.
No.
The next video, he looks like Freddy Krueger. But yeah, I've been really looking into a few. You know, I've always said that you know, practicing. Oh, glad you didn't want one of those.
I
yet,
know
did you?
it's time.
You know, magic needs to be just like any of these plants that we talk about, respected. They need to be researched. And,
Yeah.
you know, I've researched magic for at least consistently for since before I got married, almost 8 years, and him even before that as well. And I'm talking about everything from, you know, writings of alchemist to LaVey, a little bit of Crawley, and I later got into Crawley a lot more. And did I say ceremonial magic already?
I don't think so.
And ceremonial magic, and just things that we can do to purify ourself and our space. Precisely what he is doing at this
By
moment.
the power of earth, air, and fire, we bless and consecrate the space. In the name of the goddess and the god, so mote it be.
So, as you see, that's a example of some of these things, and I'd like to talk about a little more depth of some of these, you know, purification ceremonies, as I call them, what I've been doing. You know, because I can't put the point across how deep it was.
Yeah.
Like, I felt so renewed. I still feel renewed.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was the act of cleaning our aura.
Yes.
And just, oh man, you've talked about this. I know I keep talking about it, but it's so serious. I see this now.
Yep.
And I started thinking, why the hell have I waited this long to purify?
Dude,
these
whenever
things?
you start doing these things, that's your biggest thing, is like you're kicking yourself in the ass. Like, you know, I've had this power this whole time and I haven't been using it.
You know, I just want to go over this again in a little more detail because I tend to go off topic. But yeah, so I created, you know, a environment that was as peaceful and quiet as possible. You know, being on Kratom and Kava at this moment definitely enhanced the
Connectivity.
The connection was, and yeah, I came up on that, and then I started, like, you know, the side of my feet, you know, all the way up, and then, you know, I felt like lifting out the bad.
Yeah.
You know, and then bringing down this white light, you know, this purification,
purifying consciousness,
and bringing that in. And then while that came in, it was like that is what took out a lot of the bad stuff in me. And yeah, I'd done that, and I'd done a little bit of on a smaller scale yesterday, and I've just felt so renewed. This is just one example. And, you know, the places that we can go to in the mind of, we've recently been really interested in, say, for example, astral projection, Crawley, LaVey, all these people. There's different names for it. The Buddhist practice this as well. What's the name for it, by the way, and what they call it?
What is it? Emanation.
This can be tied in with like that condition that I have from time to time, being paralyzed in your sleep. The imagery that you will see, and by the way, he's been having extremely vivid dreams recently,
And
which
Kava does that.
Could do that too.
Kava can be a great tool.
Kratom could do that as well.
Yeah, Kava to a bigger extent.
But Kava for sure more.
I mean, dude, I will literally wake up, like today obviously is my day off, and I'll wake up at 8 or 9, end up going back to sleep, maybe doing a shell and then going back to sleep, and maybe I'll read a little bit, you know, and then I'll go back to sleep. And when I go back to sleep, I'm like that. I'm in this vivid reality. It's insane. And dude, I think that's a big tool. Like,
you would happen to have milk on you by any chance?
Sure do.
we're a little bit in that.
Um, and I mean, a tool that can allow you to see your dreams more clearly is indispensable. I think that's an amazing tool, you know.
So many greats. Oh, I think I was going to bring this up the other day and I completely forgot to, but the things that Salvador Dali done, and I think I did bring up, a lot of his inspiration behind his art. Obviously, he talked about mescaline. He talked about hashish. That's one of his quotes talking about
everyone
that.
should do hashish at least once in their life.
Exactly. And this one, see, there's no right or wrong to reach these states. I've recently just really realized that.
I mean, we have the preconditions for mystical experience just in our body already. We already are holding, DMT, for God's sake.
So he would fall asleep with, like, on the edge of the bed or kind of leaned up on the edge of a chair, and he would tie a little, like, thin rope around his finger with a key tied to the end of that, and then he would go into a deep sleep, and then when you move around or whatever, that key would come off and it would hit the ground. It would make kind of a loud, like, ding, kind of like an echo, and then when he would kind of jump up scared, in a shock, and the stuff that he would see.
He was very interested in hypnagogic hallucinations, which are these right before and right after coming out of sleep. And like we said, if our dreams are truly working on DMT, that would make sense that could be some sort of hack for tuning into those visions.
He had a quote that I wrote down on, actually, a picture that I printed off of him and Man Ray, and it was right after, I don't remember if it was World War I or II, but it was the surrealism has come and it's here to stay.
Yeah.
Love that so much.
Well, if you observe the progression, starting in the 20th century, you had in the 1800s, you had, realism, depicting things the way they are to our normal eye. And then you have, impressionism. Impressionism is kind of like an LSD-like state. It's like the paintings are such to where it's not definitive, but it gives you an impression enough for you to know what it is, and then you had the Dada, the Dadaism movement, people like Man Ray, and Salvador Dali and other people, and they were trying to depict something totally different, something subconscious, or supernatural, and and then you have Albert Hoffman in the 30s synthesizing LSD. A guy synthesized mescaline in the late 1800s, and McKenna talks about the 20th century being the archaic revival, and
all these stuff kind of coming back.
Yep, and the guy that made the bomb, Oppenheimer. He quoted the Bhagavad Gita. He said,
he did.
He talked about how Krishna turned into this scary thing with thousands of arms and 1,000 teeth and 1,000 eyes.
Is that what he was? Was he a Buddhist?
I don't think so. He was just he was inspired by.
I wonder what his beliefs was.
Who knows?
I actually got me curious and thinking about that.
He said, "I have become death, destroyer of worlds." And that's a scary fucking interview, man.
Very.
He's so distraught. But yeah, like,
he lost so much weight. He looked like he'd aged like 10 years in just that that short amount of time.
Imagine if you just, but it's such a double-edged sword, because there was this maniacal leader in Germany that was trying to dominate the fucking world, and if the idea for the U.S. it seemed like was, oh well, if we develop this crazy powerful bomb, then we can stop the war, and they did. But then from there on, other scientists and other countries start to develop this technology. And then it's only a matter of time before we start blowing ourselves up. Nuclear energy is incredibly toxic.
Yeah.
It has a half-life of like hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah, a good example of that chaos is displayed on Funeralopolis Electric Wizard video. I was watching that earlier today. It got me just, it comes back to the base of what this all is. And we've talked about this a lot. A lot of the greats in the past has talked about it. Just because you can fucking do something doesn't mean that you should.
Exactly.
And this can be on a larger scale or a much smaller scale.
Yeah.
This is not, just because your car can go up to 140 miles per hour doesn't mean you should.
Exactly.
Just because you have the knowledge to make this bomb, this nuclear weapon that could wipe off everything living on the face of the earth, doesn't mean you should.
No.
Calm down on your
technological
medications and your Red Bull.
Yeah.
Who wasn't that said that? It was so true.
Oh yeah, Rogan said that he could see that in the future, like it was one of his jokes. He said something like some kid, on brain soaked with SSRI medications, drinking a Red Bull will come across this machine that creates or destroys and restarts the universe. And he's the guy that pushed it, this fucking autistic SSRI filled Red Bull drinker.
If no other reasons at all, the main reason of why these SSRIs are horrible, just for the simple fact, if nothing else, there's many other health risks, but the convenience of, if you wanted to do a psilocybin trip, it simply wouldn't work.
Not only would it not work, I'm pretty sure it could be dangerous.
That seems very strange to me.
One of the safest substances in the world,
That's very strange. You know what?
Because psilocybin works by mimicking serotonin. So serotonin is one of our neurotransmitters, and psilocybin will come in. Think about this. Psilocybin has a higher affinity for the receptor site than serotonin does. So it bumps it out of the way. And it's the neurotransmitter. And it opens up this whole new division.
You know what? I'm just going to say this, and a lot of people would hate this, and we don't say this to many people. For the most part, for sure. If we need any type of mystical guidance, or possibly if we had sprained a muscle in whatever way, whatever the case may be, we simply turn to the plants to alleviate these various problems that could arise from day-to-day work or maybe some depression. But for us, in the way we are now, we mostly use and recommend these plants for its ceremonial magical properties.
And a good way to judge the safety of a drug, is these things. First of all, does it have a long history of human use? Mushrooms, kratom, kava, marijuana, all of these things, ayahuasca, have
since the beginning.
thousands of years of human use. We know these things are safe.
What do you think made these magical plants just start to come forth? I mean, that's interesting, isn't it?
Very interesting. I like to think that, the planetary mind, the goddess, the plant life sends out pheromones to beings with nervous systems that are suitable for it, and
it's insane, isn't it?
And give us inspiration and information.
I mean, let's talk about this for a minute, and obviously we have a completely different video for really going deep into what kratom is. We have another one for kava, but it's not one bit of a surprise that kratom and kava was both, for, as he mentioned, thousands of years used for religious ceremonies. It puts you there. You're already there, and then you just build from that. That's not one bit of a surprise, but it's unfortunate that a lot of people maybe who are using it don't realize that kind of property to it or not.
It's like cannabis. I mean, cannabis to me is, I mean, it like 99% of the time delivers me into this very psychedelic
Very different,
place.
but for sure,
You
very.
know, and but there's people all over smoking dope and
You know what,
are
man?
very materialistic. So it really depends on your intention.
You know this as well because I babbled on for it about it for about 3 to 4 hours. I can't remember. I realized really quick after doing that first cannabis edibles, man, I thought deeply about spiritualism and I thought very deeply about being dead. I literally thought that I was dead.
Yeah.
We listened to music, and I thought that was what was the music being played over top of my funeral. Man, we need to listen to that song again later.
Yeah, I love that song,
But-
"Fearless" by Pink Floyd off the
Was
metal
it the
album.
end of the song, right?
Yeah, they have that chanting. It's like sounds like a stadium. They're saying,
God.
they're singing, "You will never walk alone."
Dude, I can't put the point across enough, man. Like, I'm kind of going back to
Bow,
that particular place.
Bow, bow, bow,
That
bow,
I kind of
bow,
want to get
bow,
on Fearless
bow, bow, bow,
and just go
bow.
straight to that part because I wouldn't like.
Fearlessly the idiot faced the crowd.
Man, I was having such visuals. It was insane. Like, I don't know if it was. I still don't know. Was it really visuals? Was
Maybe
I in a
just
place
in
of
your
deep
mind.
imagination?
Yeah, it could be that. Cannabis is.
It's an interesting.
It's like steroids for your imagination.
Oh God! Like, yeah, I want to. The last time I listened to the end of that song, it just brought forth so much. Going back to that time that I
Yeah.
haven't, and it just like kind of even maybe helps you pick apart, remembering a few things that happened.
Mhm.
I remember the color orange, red,
Mhm.
orange, red, orange, red, like, and like it just that's what I was thinking about, and I just
Mhm.
remember like, oh, so this is what you see whenever you're dead in the process of it. And then I thought that I think what happened was I just couldn't set up anymore, and I started to kind of,
Mhm.
fall up this way a little bit, and he grabbed me by the shoulder and pulled me back up, and I couldn't thank him enough in my mind because I thought he saved me from falling down to hell.
Mhm.
So interesting, but anyway, not to start going down that road again. I've talked about it in other videos, but these plants, they do they raise awareness for so many things. As he mentioned, a lot of people, especially, probably more than, maybe even more than back in the late 60s, early 70s, probably.
Yeah.
They just probably use it. A lot of people mostly use it for different reasons.
And a lot of
They
these
can't do any harm, though.
right, a lot of these medications being prescribed, psychiatric medications. One of the things I noticed about cannabis is when I smoke it, it's like it really, in low doses, smoking it, it like stabilizes me. It makes me more conscious, and it just makes me content being in this moment right here. Other plants do that too, but its ability to stabilize me and make me more aware and more conscious. It's amazing. But a lot of these prescription medications for anxiety and depression come with a lot of risks. SSRIs are well known to cause sexual impotency. Cannabis is the total opposite. It makes sex amazing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of side effects. There's a lot of people that throw away their Xanax and start taking edibles, and they don't need it anymore.
That's so cool.
They don't have any side effects.
I think for me, though, it's interesting. I always joke about it's the mood that the plant is in for that day. Because I've had such pleasant, just peaceful experiences on cannabis. And then other times it's more anxiety. But a lot of it holds up a mirror, and it's self-reflecting on things that
Yeah.
you need to change, and we
It's
need
very
that.
psychedelic in that way, how it brings forth things that you may have been missing, not
Yeah.
seeing.
Well, we get so caught up in this daily routine of just rushing,
Yeah, we just don't take time to look at things.
and we may be doing so many things wrong and not really
Yeah.
realizing in that way because we
Or not caring or not feeling the
Yeah.
consequences of that. That's something that these psychedelics do and cannabis.
it's like these plants are trying to say, we are trying to help you with your karma, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Listen.
Yeah.
These other, you know, man-made anything,
Synthetic substances.
they're not trying
No.
to make you do self-reflection.
Right. And
to
I
make you
didn't quite
lessons.
close up that thought I just got on earlier, which was how to assess the safety of a drug. Does it have a long history of human use? And most of these pharmaceuticals on the market, I mean, are very, very new. We have no idea what the long-term effects of them are. I think it's insane that they're being pushed as much as they are. Obviously it's a money thing, but
And another word of caution, at least this is what I've assumed by reading about these things, kind of once you start them, a lot of these pharmaceuticals, you're kind of
it's hard to get off of them.
like kind of just on them. You can't really.
Yeah, people.
Some of them can be used for good reasons,
Right.
maybe more occasional.
Right.
A lot of them, they probably have great benefits.
Yeah.
Depending on what it is.
If you're taking an SSRI every day.
No, not SSRIs. I'm talking
Right.
about
Stimulants.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Those have great, but you can't do them every day.
Exactly, that's the thing. You can take some dextro and amphetamine on occasion and really, maybe pump out a lot of things that are inside of you. Maybe you need to write or
Get
draw
you in those dolly scapes.
or sing or whatever you want to do, create, and it can be great for that. The addiction is not good, but if you use it responsibly, it can totally be a good tool for tapping into certain states of consciousness.
Sometimes you can't. You can't help, and it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of this video, being attached. But one thing is, you can sometimes feel attached to feeling a little bit superior. You're like, I feel sorry for the poor chaps who get their, whatever you want to call it, from alcohol, say, for instance.
Exactly.
A lot of these really lame
they gotta
ways
make their mistakes of altering your consciousness.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. That's at least a portion of why we even put out these videos. If we would love for people to experience some of the revelations we've had on these plants.
Because the masses really believe that things like kratom and maybe kava and cannabis they're bad. Scientists didn't make these. And we're coming forth to tell you that they work really well for a lot of people, and they are, for the most part, much safer. And they do not numb and sedate you. They open you up and can be great tools for magic or for managing your chemical system, and navigating this mundane life,
Yes, sir.
And the government will never have any the sanctioned drugs by the government has never affected me. I will always use what I personally have researched and find to be the best.
What cracks me up a lot is, I've heard this from like a lot of the modern day Christian will. By the way, brother, dumb question, man.
Yeah.
You by any chance wouldn't care if I take this shell, would you, man?
Oh, yeah, man.
Awesome. Yes. The modern day Christian will talk a lot about. We are the Christians losing their rights. They take down just say the Ten Commandments. They used to be back in the day, would be in the hallways of the schools and, this and that. But, that's kind of what capitalism wants people to focus on. And it's kind of complicated to explain and talk about. But once you see it that way, you really, understand. They want you to be focused on these things. That's just an illusion to begin with. You see, these plants, for instance, a lot of other things. Why do you think it? And I could be wrong on this. It could just be something else, but some of these things are for certain. But what I was going to say is Terence McKenna's lectures has been the place where they was stored, they burned. I was reading the other day, I haven't even got a chance to tell him about this. There was an amazing lecture, supposedly. I've never heard it, but I know it must have been amazing. It's from Crawley. Early 1900s, there was a recording of him giving lectures on various things from the occult, philosophy, ceremonial magic, drugs, and it was right after that it was forbidden to even access. These things are the truths. These plants, these are the truths, and that's why I hate to even mention this term to desecrate how amazing these plants are, but the war on drugs. I hate that. War on the psychedelics more as what it is, and that's why
More on consciousness.
That's exactly what it is. They don't want people to know the truth. That's if anything else, that's one of the main points of us even putting out this video is we want to try to raise awareness that well, for one, that culture is not your friend. For two, capitalism is not your friend either.
And that shamanism is really the true religion. This government does not care if you jump out of a third-story window on LSD. Some of the most toxic substances and addictive substances known to man are legal. We can go get it right now if we wanted to. But we choose not to because we try to be as conscious as possible about what we put in our bodies, whether food or plant drugs. And if, and our bodies are alchemical vessels. And we want to be wise about what we put into them.
We're learning different things every day from the things that we study. We're having conversations as much as possible. We're bringing forth things to the table, asking each other, our opinions on these certain things. There is something to be really extracted from everything. Crawley's work, Hinduism, things in this Buddhist book, and actually having somebody a true, genuine person to talk to. Obviously, not judgmental. This is a really big part of why we believe, Christianity is, these churches, a place of congregation. And the idea is not bad at all. It's simply the way it's ran.
Right. Priesthood.
Say, for example, if you had to choose between what a true sermon, if you will, and these are the two options. On a nice Sunday, warm evening with the weather perfect, sitting inside a stuffy church with your bellies full from the KFC dinner you just ate, and you're stuffed in there like a bunch of sardines.
Everybody's judging each other.
Look, when we was little, we've been to churches, and we would love to tell you precisely what we experienced in these moments. So you have fake, uncaring conversations as you're walking out of the vehicle and going into the church. Everybody's sitting in the masses, if you will, in the mass, listening to the preacher, but not really, because they're discussing what they're going to go eat after dinner. Everybody's talking about. A lot of times they will meet up at various local restaurants, and a lot of times, especially now, you will see people on various forms of entertainment and technology. My wife, for example, has come forth to me and said when she would attend the church that her grandparents and parents forced her to go to, she would simply put in her earphones and get on her tablet and watch TV and play games. And what is this purpose? Now, another thing that I would love to point out, if you know a Christian, for example, who you go out to eat with them, now this is big. This is so fucking big. So let me just explain this real quick. And I'm sorry for rambling, my good man. Let's think of the importance of you are praying to God Himself. You sit down, you say a couple of random words as though you would say to each other, "Thank you for the food, Lord. Thank you for everything. Thank you for my raise I got at my job. Amen." I've heard this kind of prayer, we both have, for a great many of years as we were growing up, the people around us. Is that connecting with the divine? You're talking to the supposed creator that gave life to everything living. There's so many things that's not talked about that's so plain that we don't even have to present because it's right there. These things we've got to really start looking at the truth and how to really communicate back to that divine. It's I'm not saying that it has to be necessarily a lot more preparation to go into it, but there's techniques and there's things that people has used to actually get to these places. That's why Terence McKenna was so big into stressing, the magic mushrooms. He said psychedelics would. He told me this the other day, and I thought it was very interesting. McKenna's view on this topic was, I'm not saying that none of these other methods don't work, but we don't have time to prepare for them and do them. Get an empty stomach about 9 o'clock at night and just take this fucking 5 dry grams of mushrooms, and then you will know the truth.
Mm-hmm.
But it's possible that other people really don't have to do actual psilocybin. It's a great experience for. Look, I have not taken psilocybin yet. I'm going to for sure, but first of all, I've listened to him talk about his various experiences of many. I've found so much wisdom that I'm still, trying to learn from these plants that I'm taking right now, so specifically with kratom and kava, also with cannabis. But these things are you have actual meditation. A lot of people, I really feel that there's not a right or wrong way to do it. It's just creating a safer space, magic, and as we talked about before, getting into a certain mentality when even approaching these things. But yeah, this is the point why we have these talks. We're learning, me and him. We're passing back and forth different things. We're doing a lot of reading and writing whenever possible. And these talks, and I want to mention a great gentleman, a philosopher by the name of Socrates. I mentioned him before, but I never mentioned this. He didn't do much writing, so the things that we know about him is what has come forth with philosophers that came after him, that actually a couple of them really admired him and knew him, and they kind of had this, you know,
Oral transmission.
yeah. So what they said was Socrates didn't, his, what worked for him wasn't writing. He liked to go interview people. He thought that the best way to get down to the meat and potatoes of the truth is through communication with another human being.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can totally see that. That's why I think we love talking so much. But yeah, you know, to make a long story short, which I never do, let's work on getting back to the truth. And once we are actually going after this, then it will start to reveal itself to us a little bit at a time.
Nature loves courage. Nature responds to courage by removing obstacles. Do you have anything else you'd like to say, sir?
I believe that I've ranted for damn too long, but when you're moved, you know, by some plants, then we must do whatever is necessary.
Truth.
But yes, my good man, I've definitely said all I could possibly say, at least at this point, brother.
All right. We shall wrap up this video.
Awesome.
Until next time, Hare Krishna. Realize that being a human being in a body is an amazing situation for adventure. You know, there's so much to discover. Keep a free and open mind and go forward into the matrix.
Absolutely. You know, we are in this together. As he's mentioned on other videos, let's make it fun as much as possible. Set this place up for a quest. And if you don't care, brother, I'd like to end with what I started with, my good man.
Okay.
He controlled the vigorous steam, he harnessed the lightning for hire, he drove the celestial team, and man is the Lord of the fire.
Hare Krishna.
Peace.